Okay, welcome back, or welcome for those of you that it's your first time listening to the podcast. I have the pleasure today of being joined by Neal Gandhi, who is the CEO and co-founder of TPXimpact, and is also, I believe, currently non-executive director of Questers Group. But Neal, you've also, I was just saying before the podcast started, you've also had a lot of experience founding firms. I think I counted 4 on your CV. Does that make you a serial entrepreneur?
I guess it must do. I've been doing it since the first services company I co-founded was in '96. So how many years ago is that? Many.
That was Explorer.
That was Explorer. Back in the day, right at the very beginning of the internet, really, the beginning of the web.
And what was Explorer doing?
Internet consultancy. So
okay.
It's what happened was myself and 3 others, we all worked for the same big American software company, and in the jobs that we had, and my job was in European marketing, but it would put me in Silicon Valley 1 week a month in 1995. So the birth of the web. And I saw the birth of the web there. And then if you look at what was going on in the UK, it saw the internet as new media. So it was a kind of very New York view of the internet, whereas Silicon Valley was a much more holistic view of what it would become. And so we brought that Silicon Valley view of the web back to the UK and started a services company to help. We figured every corporation, every large organization would end up running their business effectively across the internet.
Wow, that was quite, now it seems obvious, but I think I first used email in 1996. So it shows you how behind much of the world was at that stage, but you clearly saw something happening.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. If you were in the valley, right, driving down Route 101 into Silicon Valley from San Francisco, it was pretty clear what was happening. And then if you came back here, I remember distinctly coming back here, and there were a couple of magazines, New Media Age being one of them, and another one I can't remember. But I remember the Pepperami sausage website winning website of the year, and I thought, that's not what this is about, right? This is not about some sort of funky marketing platform. It's it is, but it's not only about just some funky marketing platform. It's about radically overhauling supply chains, and not just B2C e-commerce, but physically how companies work, how supply chains are constructed, how internal systems talk to each other. This was completely different, and so that's what we wanted to bring.
And what was it that got you into Silicon Valley in the first place, or got you into that area in the first place? In those days, I'm guessing degrees in computing science weren't.
No, I don't have a degree.
Ground.
No, I don't have a degree.
Okay, well, it's probably a benefit, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. So I did an HND in business information technology that kind of put me in a space that was both understanding how business works and understanding how technology works. And ended up in a role in Novell, which is a big US software company, and ended up in European marketing for Novell. So that was the thing that meant I had to go to the US all the time.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up in the Valley.
Okay, brilliant. Now, listen, I realise there's a vast amount to talk about between Explorer and TPXimpact. But I'd like to talk about your most recent venture, which is the CEO and co-founder of TPXimpact. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do it?
Sure. We do digital transformation in its broadest sense across predominantly into public sector. So 75%, in fact, 72% of our most recent results are in public sector, with a goal to have 3/4 of our offer in public sector predominantly. So central government, local government, health, but then more broadly NGOs, not-for-profits, are kind of what we broadly call public services. And we do everything from organizational design and change right the way through to running managed services.
Okay.
And then it's a set of capabilities.
You'll have to explain something to a lot of, I guess, a lot of my students, because I always tell my students that working in certainly my experience of working in the public sector was that it was tough, it was often not great pay, and you had to deal with procurement. But both, you're the second founder that I've spoken to, along with Rob Gardner at Trebled, who now runs Garwood Solutions, who have been very successful at selling to the public sector. So how does that work?
So the transformation in public sector happened in 2010 with the advent of government digital services, led at the ministerial level by Francis Maude. The most important thing he did actually then was take over spend control of major digital programs. Alongside that, and it implemented a set of standards and working practices that were modern and up to date. The backgrounds of that is a series of huge IT failures in public sector. The most, probably the most famous is the NHS National Programme for IT, which reportedly spent something like 20 billion and actually delivered very little for it. And so that was the background. So GDS was created, and part of the GDS strategy was the recognition that true innovation in service delivery would probably come from SMEs, and small and medium enterprises. And so it was sort of mandated that the goal was to get 35% of government's digital spend spent with SMEs rather than with the very large systems integrators. Who'd historically dominated all that spend, and had been, sort of part of that. Of course, they delivered some successful programs, but they'd also failed to deliver on many occasions. And so that then opened the door to a set of new companies to come in. And that's been an ongoing trend for the last 12 years. And so things like procurement frameworks were simplified. So you have things like G-Cloud and Digital Outcomes Services, which are procurement frameworks, which you apply for once. Usually every couple of years, you apply for once, you do all the legwork to get onto the framework, and then from there on you're automatically allowed to bid for a whole series of contracts that are placed onto those frameworks. So you don't have to do much of the work.
And if you obviously I don't want insider information about TPX, but in terms of the day rates, certainly when I was in consulting, day rates in the public sector were pretty low. But obviously, if you're doing, I've got a good friend who's one of the chief architects for the NHS, and he's saying that if you can't take that mindset anymore, that if you want decent people, certainly with digital transformation, he's working on a big data project. You need to loosen the purse strings. That's something that has accompanied the changes with central government procurement.
It's still not as attractive as other sectors. The reason we have 70%, 25% is we can shore up some of the margins in the commercial sector that we can't deliver in the public sector. It is tougher, but at the same time, from a business perspective, it's quicker. Contrary to what people believe, it's actually quicker to win business typically it's quicker to win business in the public sector than it is in the commercial sector.
Wow.
Because of the frame, an opportunity. I'm reviewing, I'm at over £100 million worth of bids at the moment, and those bids are on procurement timetables that are something like 2 months.
Wow. Okay. And also, I'm asking this personally. Some of the accounts I was responsible for in the public sector, or even sort of quasi-public sector, they tended to pay quite late. Have there been improvements with the speed of payments and things like that?
Massive. That's not our experience at all. Our cash flow is brilliant. Our cash conversion ratio is is incredibly strong.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
we're paid on,
Good.
you're typically paid on 30 days on the nail, way quicker than commercial sector.
Wow. Okay. Maybe it was just my negotiation skills that weren't up to scratch.
It's probably a different time, right? I think things have changed a lot. And
Yeah,
I think recognition that if you want to get 35% of your spend into SMEs, you better start paying on time.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so,
okay,
and I think that.
Could you tell me a little bit about how TPX works? So I guess there's not a huge number, but there are a number of companies that do digital transformation, including in the public sector. What does TPX do differently, or what does it have that has allowed it to be successful?
So firstly, it's the end-to-end proposition. So, in order to deliver on true digital transformation, it's not just about, web enabling a few forms at the front end, which is kind of what most people's experience is. You've got to change the organization as much as you have to change the technology and the customer's interface onto that technology. You have to change the underlying tech to really facilitate some of the possibilities that are there. And you need that end-to-end capability. So you need a group of people that are as capable at organizational design and change as they are on deep engineering to lift legacy systems and migrate legacy systems from legacy tech on-premise data centers into cloud. As much as you need user researchers and service designers or user-centered design approaches to make sure that what you deliver actually delivers on the original objectives, and you need all of that on under a modern platform, if you like, so a modern way of delivery. So an agile native, cloud native organization that hasn't had to migrate from older ways of working in the past to a modern way of working. It's born agile, born cloud, with the end-to-end capability.
That sort of connects to 2 points that I wanted to talk about, and it's kind of you to sort of give an overview of your market sort of value proposition. There are 2 things I wanted to talk about. One is keeping people. It's there's the employee proposition. It's hard to keep talented people, especially with digital skills, given that they're quite rare. But also, you have not only managed to do that, you've managed to grow incredibly fast. How have you managed that?
So we acquired a set of companies. That's been the biggest. Yes, we grew organically 16% on a like-for-like basis last year, but we also overall grew nearly 60%. So that's a series of acquisitions. So I think if you go back firstly to the employee value proposition, so we acquired a set of companies, and then we are now in the process of integrating those companies. Our core employee value proposition revolves around us as a company and what we believe in. So we've applied to become a certified B Corporation. It's a delay in the audit process, but when we get our B Corp certification, we'll be the 30th listed company in the world, the second listed company in the UK, to be a certified B Corp. Wow. And what that basically means is that we are run for the benefit of all of our stakeholders, rather than being run for the benefit exclusively of shareholders. And so that philosophy runs all the way through the business, and therefore it's from an employee value proposition perspective, it's kind of what kind of company do you want to work for. If you want to work in the commercial sector, then this is a unique place to be. Then layered on top of that is the kind of work we do. The reason we're here is because we want to make a difference in the work that we do. And the reason that 75% of our revenues are aim to be 75% from public services is that's where we feel we can make the biggest difference. There's money to be made in making a bank transaction happen a few milliseconds faster. but there's an awful lot from my perspective is, and that has a place in society. I'm not saying that doesn't, but from my perspective, making local authority adult social services work better for people in need is something that I want us to be involved with. Making the outpatient journey within the NHS somewhat smoother than it is today is something I want to be involved with. Making central government departments operate substantially more efficiently and get substantially more bang for their buck is something that I want to be involved with, because that for me is what gets me out of bed. Yes, there's shareholder return, of course, and we are a listed company, but what gets me out of bed in the morning is the work that we do.
That's great.
So that's the second part of our employee value proposition. And then the third part is, a great set of benefits. Our people get 30 days holiday a year. We're incredibly flexible about where you work, when you work. We have our core values are our autonomy with responsibility. So we give people an awful lot of autonomy. We expect them to be responsible with it and be adult. So it's a really strong employee value proposition. And as a consequence, we're at huge numbers of people towards us from a recruitment perspective.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. Because it's a tough space at the moment, isn't it? Well, in fact, don't know. For other people, it's a tough space at the moment.
It's changing. I think it's changing pretty quickly. So we record this in August 2022. Yep. 8 months ago, there were headlines about record VC funding, record new job creation. 2 months ago, there were headlines of layoffs in tech, VC funding stalling, VC-backed companies being told to extend cash runways. It's a very different world today than the world we lived in a few months ago. And so I think it is changing. The thing that says this is a very difficult market, everyone's chasing the same jobs, everyone's chasing the same people. I think is changing as we speak.
Okay. I guess given the percentage of your people that you've acquired, I'd like to get your view on if you don't mind, on the acquisition process. For two reasons. One, it's quite rare to talk to a founder who so soon is dealing with acquisitions. But the other side of it is that obviously, if you're buying digital transformation companies with good people, then the multiple that you pay is above the odds, and you've got to make that work, because it's not just the value of the people that you're buying, it's also the synergy between your vision, the companies, and their people. How have you gone about making that work? Does it start with it probably starts with the type of companies that you're looking to buy and the fit with you? Could you talk me through what you look for and how you try and make it work, please?
The first thing we look for are companies or founders of companies, management companies that align with our worldview, that businesses should be run in the name of stakeholder value, not exclusively shareholder value. That's the first thing. And we look for people who believe in that, in everything that they are. Now, I'm not saying that we've got it right every time. I don't think we have. I mean, it's not, doing what we do is not simple. And, we've bought 16 services companies over the last 4 years. So it's not easy.
Wow.
And you don't always get it right. But the first thing you look for is that. The second thing you look for is what kind of work does it do? What kind of work motivates it? What does it want to be famous for? So you're looking, the main thing we're looking for is that cultural alignment. Now, what we've discovered over the years is that sometimes people will talk a good game, but actually whether they truly believe in that, there are some things that we believe in, like there are loads of companies out there that, particularly in public sector, would be very happy to sell a person on a day rate into a role that doesn't add any value whatsoever.
Sure.
That's not us. I want to make sure that when we're custodians of taxpayer money, and our job is to make sure we deliver amazing value for that taxpayer money. And so that, we're looking for people who believe in that, right? Who believe that they can make a difference.
This will be great for my students. So I teach over different courses. I teach 400 students a year that go. I train them up in consulting skills insofar as you can, and then I set them up with local charities to act as teams of consultants, either for public sector or for various non-profits, environmental development, etc. And I've done that explicitly because a lot of them want to go and do their internship or do their project with IBM or a big blue chip name, and I often say to them, in some ways it's easier to do it with a large firm because they're not too bothered, where the pounds are spent here and there, and with smaller firms, with non-profits, I guess it's different to the public sector, but certainly for my students, it's great experience for them, and the whole B Corp thing is something I think a lot of them look for when they're looking for future employers now, and I think young people, this is not just consultants, but my experience of young people is that with the climate emergency and all the rest of it, they're much more focused on the ethical, moral side of things than perhaps my generation was.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we think, look, we're at scale. We're at north of 700 people nowadays, and we're growing pretty quickly, and we're always looking for people, by the way. But we think an important part of that employee value proposition, particularly for Gen Zs, is there's got to be more to life than making money, and partly it's because our generation have kind of let them down. So our generation, I'm not sure. I call it my generation because I don't know how old you are. I'm
50 next year.
I'm 54 at the moment, and our generation kind of had, current generation, it's hard for them to get their first home. They're living in a world of a climate crisis. It's a very different outlook.
Yeah. And
so it's very difficult to kind of become motivated by the money. It's like, why be motivated? Exclusive,
sure.
Like, great salary is brilliant to have, and of course, it enables a decent lifestyle. But you've got to recognize, I think, that people today, younger people today, have a different set of influences to the ones that we had.
Yeah.
So we think we're building a company for them.
Great. That's great. Listen, I'm very interested in, given the amount of experience that you've had and the amount of number of companies that you've co-founded or founded, when you started TPXimpact, what were the main lessons and learning points that you bought, that you perhaps had, you'd fallen into some traps you'd learned from experience, that you brought to the company that you're now, has guided your leadership style?
So I think the thing that we brought here was this recognition that if you want to break through, so for us, we're here to make big dents in the universe, and we do that through we try and do that through our public sector work, but we want to make ever larger dents. And the only way you can do that is if you're at scale. And, you can try growing a services company from scratch, chipping away and trying to get bigger. And, that's how I've done the last 3 companies.
Right.
And, got to a certain scale, got to a certain set of revenues. It takes a long time. And so I think the thing that we brought here was this recognition that you can acquire companies and grow. And that, my companies have all been acquired. So I've been on the other side of that.
Yep.
I understand what a good acquirer looks like and what a bad acquirer looks like.
Yeah. Okay.
I understand how to, create value and how to destroy value.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that we get it all right all the time, and actually we're in a really difficult phase in the company at the moment where we're integrating lots of our companies into one, and that's quite painful. But I think those are the lessons that we learn. I mean, you couldn't. We incorporated the company in December 16. We listed in December 18.
Wow.
And that was the start. The listing was the start.
Okay.
Who knew you could do that, right? The day before we listed, we were 3 employees, and the day after we were 100.
That's incredible.
Yeah, because and then the day after then the listing kind of was the final part of 4 acquisitions. So we made 4 acquisitions on the day, and I think we were 150 the following day.
Wow.
It's hard to grow services companies organically, exclusively. Or it's not hard, but it takes a long time. It just takes time.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, in fact, it's not my guess, it's a question. You presumably have had to deal with funders, whether private equity or banks, etc. And presumably they've wanted a slice of the pie and have governance requirements as part of the deal. I don't know.
No, so we didn't take any private equity funding. So the total amount of money raised by this company to date has been about £6 million, just over £6 million.
Okay.
$1 million prior to IPO to get us to the IPO, and then $5 million at the IPO itself.
Okay.
I think our bank balance has never, from the IPO onwards, I don't think our bank balance has ever gone below about £5 million, maybe 4.
Okay.
So we've never touched that money, really. We've done it through combination of generating our own cash, combination of some bank debt, and issuing our own shares.
Okay.
So by listing, we create our own currency.
Sure.
And by issuing shares, and that's how we've done it. So today we are, the market's crashed, so we're 110, 120 million market cap today. Peak was more like 250 million market cap.
Gosh.
And it's 250 million of market cap generated with £6 million of equity.
There can't be many stories like that in professional services. There's probably a few stories like that in tech, but in professional services, I haven't come across anything like that before.
No, I don't think there is.
Okay, that's well. Congratulations, first of all, because it's just in terms of paperwork, it's a huge deal doing the IPO and all the acquisitions.
Yeah, I mean, my co-founder and CFO Ollie Rigby, is just incredible. I mean, he's a machine.
Okay.
And it's all of that side of things is literally him and his relentless work ethic and ability.
Finding people like that is gold dust, isn't it? It's as an aside, I founded and run a non-profit, and I was very fortunate to find someone. I don't know if she's like Ollie or not, but incredibly capable, which allowed me to look good, but it was entirely her doing. And what is in store for the future? Is it sort of continued growth? Is it focusing on consolidation at the moment and getting through this economic bump as well, I guess?
Well, I think so. Firstly, consolidation of the organization into the single TPXimpact brand. We've put a number of our companies in. There's 4 more companies that we've acquired that we need to integrate further into the organization. It's the professionalization of a bunch of small businesses. So, historically, the reason services companies typically don't scale and don't get big, and there are tons and tons and tons of very small services companies, is they typically don't see the value in investing in back office.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
They don't see you need a decent HR system. You need a decent applicant tracking system. You
Yeah.
need a decent CRM. You probably need professional service automation.
Yeah.
You need a decent finance platform. And typically small companies don't spend anything on those things.
Sure.
What they do is they typically have a heroic individual
Yes.
in the middle of all of it that you go to for everything.
Yes.
And that works to a certain level. And then of course there's a just a brain capacity problem.
What is that level in so I'm always fascinated by tipping points and sort of inflection points. And in my experience, and I've spoken to hundreds of growing consultancies, there is a point where you can do it from the heads of the founders and one great individual who bears the burden. What is the point where that becomes foolish?
It depends on your ambition. I mean, look, services companies run well, can be very profitable, and for some founders create an incredible lifestyle. So, a services company doing 5 to 10 million a year, chucking off 20% profit, is making 1 to 2 million a year for its founders. If there's a couple of founders, taking very decent dividends, that's a very healthy life to be leading, obviously, financially. And so it sort of depends. I mean, you can run a company like that for an awfully long time. And carry on doing it, and that's fine. You don't need to put processes or systems into place or anything like that. But if your ambition is to grow, is to scale to something, then you have to put them in, and probably you have to start putting them in sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
because you've got to get the organization used to the idea that it is a professionally run organization.
It's relatively cheap now as well. I mean, certainly compared to when you started your first. Well, in fact, there wouldn't have been PSAs back.
There wasn't PSA. We wrote our own back in the day.
Okay, yeah, but now you can get it for sort of £6 or $6 per user, which is remarkable.
I mean, PSA, and then making your business process work around PSA is probably the single most sensible thing a company can do if they're starting out. Now, we don't have a PSA, by the way, right now. We are going to put one in.
Yeah, okay. But I thought you were going to say you had 6 PSAs.
No, none of our companies have. So that's one of the problems. That's why there's small companies.
Right.
And so we're having to implement PSA in this financial year, hopefully, onto an organization of greater than 700 people, but 700 people plus about 300 contractors.
Yeah.
So about 1,000 person organization.
Okay.
Which is really, really hard, but incredibly necessary because it can't scale without it.
Okay. Neal, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just really wanted to say thank you for sharing your story because it is unusual. It's very impressive. And certainly the B Corp angle is going to mean a lot to my students who have actually, they're in it at the moment. They're all off working over the summer for various non-profits, and it'll be lovely for them.
But let me clarify though. B Corp is not a not-for-profit. B Corp.
No, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just need to clarify that we are a public.
It's about the values, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I do get that, but don't get me wrong, they're not all going to run off and join non-profits, but I know that values are something that they talk about a lot more than when I was at university.
Yeah. And you're in Cardiff, aren't you?
Yes.
So we're building out our Welsh business.
Are you now? Okay, well that's great. I will alert the troops. And I'm sure, because I teach MBA and master's students, so and a lot of them have experience prior to, so you will probably get some you'll probably get too many applications. So
we can never have too many. It's fine.
Okay. Well, listen. Best of luck with the continued growth journey, the integration, and everything that's going to come from it.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Neal. Thank you. Good. Thanks a lot, Neal. I really appreciate that. Just a quick, I mentioned Rob Gardner right at the beginning, but as you were talking about PSAs, he might actually be a useful connection. Do you know him?
I don't know. What company is he again?
So
Oh, he was Tribal.
yeah. So he was I can't remember if he was the founder, but he grew Tribal to a huge. He's grown and sold a couple of companies, but he now runs a firm that specializes in implementing PSAs in professional service organizations.
Oh, does he?
So he might be a user. I can introduce you.
Yeah, that'd be really useful.
He's a nice guy as well. You know, he's been through what you've been through, and he'd be a good contact to make.
Okay, that'd be awesome. And you know, we are on the recruitment trail in South Wales in particular. We have a very fast growing business in South